Hi everyone, it's Don and I hope you're having a fantastic day. Well, I predicted it. Many other people predicted it. But you know what? It just seems to have come to a complete surprise to the Premier in British Columbia. How could he possibly have seen this coming? So the Premier leader in British Columbia, NDP leader Horgan, hi everyone. I was just wondering, why is the Premier of BC making the live long and prosper sign at a swearing-in ceremony like he's Spock from Star Trek? Can someone explain that to me? Was recently asked about the new bill trying to be introduced into the Senate on that, we're going to make that bypass of Canada to Alaska permanent. Why not? It's outdated. It shouldn't. Let's get rid of that in the Passenger Vessel Act. Let's just eliminate it altogether. And his comments leave me shaking my head, because he's supposed to be representing Canada. He's supposed to be representing the people of British Columbia and their interests. And some of the comments he made is not only ridiculous, it's absolutely mind-boggling stupid. So here, let's just go over it here. So Horgan says, a bill introduced this week by Utah Senator Mike Lee to permanently bypass British Columbia as a cruise destination is not something he expects to hurt the province's tourism at all. It wouldn't hurt if, they pass a bill saying cruise ships don't have to come to Canada anyway. It won't, because we have beautiful cities and people want to come to Canada for their cruise, and, it's good. Yeah, some people do want to come to Canada, but I'll talk about a few of those little changes in a minute and why it might be advantageous for Americans to skip Canada ports, even though I don't want them to. But I digress. He says, I'm confident Canada has got a good handle on this. Canada, who in January of this year banned cruise ships from all of its oceans, not just its ports, its oceans, until February of 2022. And when asked, what's the science behind that? What's the study behind that? What's your thing behind that? They just said, we decided to do it. Because there were no studies, there were no fact-based science things, there were no tracing, there was no discussion about it. They just banned it for over a year. So, yeah, on we go. The relationship between U.S. President Joe Biden and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is a solid one, he said. The same President of the United States who his very first act when he took office on the very first day was to end the Canadian pipeline that has been being worked on for years. The very, good relationship. Perfect good relationship. Come on. We have good relationships to the south in Washington, Oregon, and California, and now emerging relationships with Alaska. I know the cruise ship sector very much values Victoria and Vancouver and Prince Rupert as destinations for travelers around the world. Yes, they do. But they don't have to come here. And if there's reasons for them not to come here, maybe there'll be less cruising, and less and less and less. Remember, in Victoria and British Columbia, it makes up about $2.6 billion of direct income to British Columbia, not to mention all the extra jobs it creates in the restaurants and the hotels and tours and things like that. Little things like that. Little things like that. He's confident. I'm so glad he's confident, because he goes, this new overture by that junior senator from Utah. I like how he says that junior senator, as if it's not very important. Can you be any more condescending? Can you really be any more condescending? I don't think so. So it's certainly a complicating factor, to be sure, he says, but not one that we could have predicted. I predicted this back in January when Canada banned cruise ships for a year. And then when they passed the Passenger Vessel Act workaround until February next year. I said, I wonder how long it's going to be until somebody introduces a bill saying they never have to do this again. So if I can see it, a dumb guy on YouTube, why can the premier of a province not have predicted this? And then he goes, so to say that British Columbia and me, to suggest that somehow I could have thrown myself in front of the bus and fought this is the height of hubris. In my mind. Well, I'm glad it's in your mind, and I'm glad you can use hubris in a sentence. If only you had as much common sense as the big words you know how to use. Because I saw it coming. The port authorities in Vancouver and Victoria all saw it coming. They've been saying this for months. And it seems like you're the only one who didn't understand it. Also, by the way, throw yourself in front of the bus? You mean stand up for your province's constituents? Stand up for the people you're supposed to represent? Stand up for the people you were elected to help and protect? You mean that? You didn't want to stand up and do that? You mean you thought you might throw yourself? Who are you throwing yourself in front of a bus? It would have been a very simple workaround. You could have went to the Transport Committee and said, hey, look, we're going to allow cruise ships technical stops. They can come into our port, they can pull up, and then they can leave. And that they don't get off the ship, nothing happens. We can't catch COVID from somebody driving by on a cruise ship and waving to us from 100 feet. You can't do that. That's all you had to introduce. And then you would have at least said something to try and protect the industry and try and protect what's happening in your province. But no, God forbid you should throw yourself in front of the bus and represent your constituents. That is one of the most ridiculous and, quite frankly, self-serving, disgusting things a politician can say. How could I possibly have stood up for my constituents? I'm not going to throw myself in front of the bus. Oh, boy. But I digress. It gets me mad when politicians don't do what they're elected to do. Protect the people. Look after the interests of the people, not your personal interest. Look after your constituents' interests. Here's what he also said. I really got a kick. You know when he said, we have a really good working relationship with California and now emerging with Alaska? Well, quickly before we talk about that beautiful relationship that Canada, British Columbia has with the southern states in the United States, by southern they mean California, Washington, and Alaska, that really good relationship, let me invite you to subscribe to this channel because I think we have a good relationship. We all love cruising and we love talking about it. Remember, it doesn't cost you anything, and sometimes I go off on the handle a little bit, but I kind of think in this case it's going to be deserved. So yeah, hit that subscribe button, the little notification button, and let's talk about that great relationship that this premier thinks we have. Well, let's see what Alaska says about that beautiful relationship he says he has. Senator Dan Sullivan, who was one of the people who introduced the bill that got the Passenger Service Vessel Act bypassed, says Dan Sullivan was happy with the bill's results, and after encountering no compromise from Canada during early negotiations, we put forward a number of very reasonable suggestions to try and accommodate what we were hoping would be fighting chance for the tourism season for our small businesses and so decimated by this pandemic and our colleagues in Canada. He goes on and says, this is not the cooperative spirit that has defined Alaska-Canadian relationships for decades. Quite frankly, we've been very disappointed by it. That's your very good working relationship you have? They feel you turned your back on them in their hour of need. So now not only have you turned your back on Alaska and the cruising industry, one of your biggest employers, for two of your largest cities, you've also turned your back on the constituents that you represent. And by the way, the minute that first one was passed and they're now setting up cruises, immediately he came out and said, oh, I'm going to set up a meeting now with Alaska and talk about cruising. maybe you should have set up those meetings for like the months ahead of time, like they were doing in Alaska. The Alaska representatives, they spoke up and they worked for the people of Alaska. And they got their businesses some work. They're not going to make anything what they normally make in a year, but at least they're going to have some income, and maybe some businesses were going to be saved. But you in Vancouver, you were afraid to, I don't want to step in front of the bus. I'm going to be a good little boy, and nothing's going to happen. I couldn't have seen this coming, even though every single other person in British Columbia, in the cruising market, in the cruising industry, in the port authorities, saw it coming. But you couldn't think it's coming. How's this for a rant today, folks? How's this for a rant against my own country? The country that I love. And you know what? I'd hate to say I'd be glad to see you lose the business, Canada. But man, sometimes I wish some of these politicians would just be put in their place for being so arrogant and so full of themselves and not really willing to step up for their community. Well, I hope you appreciate this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Want to see more tips, more tricks, more travel vlogs from around the world? Hit that subscribe button. Till next time, have yourself a safe and a great vacation.